Thank you for joining us for Week 8 of the Superflexology Start Sit Series. I'm your host, John Bauer. You can find me on Twitter at The Bauer Club. Tonight, I'm joined by the usual suspects. And since I cut you off from your closing thoughts last week, and I know you lost a little bit of sleep over that, I'm going to start with you, and that's Jordan Lindsay, and that's at Jailbreak Screen on Twitter. What's going on, Jordan?
Hey, man. Yeah, no, I actually still haven't slept. So I'm hoping that tonight we get a nice rest before that exhilarating Vikings-Redskins game tomorrow.
Yeah, that's not going to be one that I'm probably going to watch. Anyway, and as always, the man, the myth, the legend, Mitch Sorensen. That's at DynoMC on Twitter.
Hey, what's going on, guys?
What's going on, Mitch? And then last but not least, Dan, the man with the Mahomes backup plan, Lamagna. Did you like that, Dan? And that's at LC_Dean on Twitter.
That was slick. Matty Moore all the way in the fishbowl this week. But, John, tonight I just want to offer something to our team here and all our listeners, a little bit of fantasy football advice and an endorsement for the company Apple. And let me explain. Picture, guys, we have the most strenuous day of work. We all have that day where you're just mentally exhausted by the end. You rush home to your family just to spend a little time with them before you have to go back out for a meeting. And then you come back home just in time to get the kids to bed. In that 12-hour crazy day, our minds are trained for fantasy football, and that's what we're mostly thinking about. And we squeeze in as much as we can. But when you go to the restroom, before you put your kids to sleep, guys, stop scrolling through the latest fantasy football news and do not drop the phone in the toilet, all right? So this did happen to me today. Luckily, I'm still good to go for the show. The new iPhone 11 Pro works perfectly after falling in the toilet of water. It is just like the commercials advertised. So the lesson to our listeners is there is a time where you do have to unplug and put fantasy football down for 1 minute and go buy an Apple. The iPhone. Thank you.
I had absolutely no idea where you were going with that. Were you paid to say that?
I should be. If we could send this clip of our show to Apple, that would be awesome. But I was a little bit nervous because I'm like, John is going to kill me if my phone doesn't work tonight because I dropped it in the toilet. But that did happen.
Well, thanks for sharing that story. Again, I had absolutely no clue where you were going with that. I was a little worried at first, but yes, a good story there for our listeners. And especially when you're doing your fantasy football research, don't drop your phones in your toilet. Great to have all of you back tonight. And let's dive right into it. So let's talk about our overall rankings for the season and then a really quick recap of the Week 7 start sit advice. Mitch, not to feed your ego too much, you went 4 or 5 last week with your takes. So for the season, Mitch, you have 21 points, Dan 18. I am finally out of the basement. I have 17, and Jordan's sitting there right behind me with 16, but it's nice to finally move out of the bottom spot there. So the big hits as a team last week, Golden Tate above wide receiver 27, came in at wide receiver 21. Joe Mixon below running back 15. He was in the 30s in PPR, so that was a fantastic take. And the big misses, Marlon Mack, Stephon Diggs, Aaron Jones. We had Marlon Mack as a play, and we had Diggs and Aaron Jones as a sit. It didn't really play out that way. Guys, Week 8, it's a pivotal week. These fantasy matchups become more and more critical. 4-4 is a hell of a lot different than 3-5 when you're making a push for that last playoff spot. And there isn't much time left in the regular season, so we have to get these right, guys. Let's look at the starts compared to the Fantasy Pros weekly consensus rankings. And Mitch, you always get off the hook here. You get off easy. We always throw you in last. You're going first tonight on the starts.
All right, on the start. So this one, it was kind of one that just jumped off the page at me. I just scrolled down to figure out where he was. But so Kiki Cutie is wide receiver 50 versus Oakland this week. And as we saw last week when the Raiders faced Green Bay, they're a huge pass funnel defense, which means they're really good against the run and absolutely atrocious against the pass. And now that Fuller's out, we know that the Texans wide receivers are pretty set in stone. We're going to have Hopkins and Stills on the outside, and we're going to have Kiki in the slot. And luckily enough for Kiki, he gets to go against the second lowest rated cornerback in LaMarcus Joyner by PFF. I don't really think the Texans are going to be able to run the ball very well, but I think Kiki's going to be able to put up at least a wide receiver 3 week. And I think wide receiver 50 is just way too low.
Jordan, Dan, are we going to let Mitch off the hook here, picking a guy coming in ranked 110th on the week?
I think we are, because I think he's wrong, John. It's the Kenny Stills show.
I'm glad Mitch brought Kiki up because I'm going to talk about this game later on. But Dan, I'm on board with you. Kenny Stills. And hopefully you're not stealing my answer later in the show with Kenny.
I won't steal your mojo, man.
All right, thank you. Well, let's move over to you, Dan. What are your thoughts here? So compared to the Fantasy Pros weekly consensus rankings, who do you think finishes significantly higher than their consensus ranking?
All right, I'm a little salty after falling back a little bit last week. I'm stoked. There you go, Jordan. You're talking about being stoked before. My Cowboys are irrelevant again, but John, I'm going with D.D. Westbrook, who is ranked 30th. I know he has a questionable tag and his shoulder neck did not practice Wednesday. So listeners, please, right up to game time, be watching his injury status. But he was a game time decision last week. And then I watched this Jags game, and D.D. put on a clinic for an amazing 6 catches, 103 yards. And it doesn't even do justice, that stat line of how good he looked in that game. And he couldn't have been that injured because he's still returning punts. And he just looked awesome, guys. He looked like the DD of like late last year where I thought he was going to break out in this offseason. They're playing the poor Jets who just got embarrassed. And I think the Jets are going to be more competitive this week because they're going to be ticked off. And that's a good thing. That's going to keep the game competitive where Jacksonville's still going to have to pass. And D.D. Westbrook is going to go off and blow away that 30th ranking in Fantasy Pros.
Jordan, I want your thoughts here because I know you're big on Baby Shark over there. Do you think we're starting to see the transition from DJ Shark being the go-to guy to maybe Dede stealing more of that number one role again?
Unfortunately, I do agree. I think Dede and Gardner are really starting to mesh together, and he's becoming that underneath option for Gardner because the line's bad and Shark doesn't have enough time to get open. So Dede's going to be the safety blanket, so I totally agree.
Yeah, the last 2 weeks against the Saints and Bengals, there has been a slight shift in power there. And Dan, I know throughout the whole offseason, especially in Dynasty, you were really high on Shark, and I think Westbrook to an extent too.
Yeah, what I'm starting to see now, John, maybe we could call this like a poor man's version of Godwin and Mike Evans. I think it's a 1A and 1B. I think you have to watch matchups. You got to see how the team's playing. I think they're both going to eat this weekend versus the Jets. But Dede at his price, while everyone's going to be hopping on Shark, I think is the start of the week.
I was just going to say you kind of compared it to a poor man's Godwin and Evans situation. But you kind of answered the question there that you said you think both are going to do well this week. I was going to ask, do you think it's going to be a kind of one or the other type situation week in and week out?
I think we'll see some of that, but I think you're going to see them both produce. Again, you got to, every once in a while you have that shutdown corner or, the best defender in the slot. So you have to look at the matchups. But if the matchups are favorable, I think they both produce. Jags have a good offense. They're just probably not in that Godwin Evans level because they have Lenny Fournette, Uncle Lenny there in the backfield eating up a lot of touches.
Uncle Lenny, I like that. Over to you, Jordan. Who's your start of the week?
I hope this isn't too much of a cop-out, but at wide receiver 20, it's going to be Juju Smith-Schuster. And I think this is fair just because I've actually been asked this week if they should start Juju or not. I'm like, yes. Mason Rudolph's going to be back, first of all, so Dink and Duck, rather, I guess. We would call him James Conner's best friend. But I think Rudolph's going to open the ceilings back up for the Pittsburgh offense. And, against the Dolphins, what better time to get it right? So, Juju could easily finish top 10 this week. I'm very confident in that.
It's absolutely crazy to see Juju ranked. I think in PPR he's coming at 19th, but yeah, against the Dolphins, I don't see a reason that he can't do very, very well this week. Before we move on to the sits, my start of the week, and it's Allen Robinson against the Chargers. He's had at least 7 targets every single game this season, 25 targets over the last 2 weeks. It doesn't matter who's throwing him the ball, whether it's Chase Daniel, Mitchell Trubisky. He's the go-to target in Chicago. There is pretty much no running game to talk about there in Chicago. And Allen Robinson, this offense has to go through him. And they're going up against a Chargers defense that just gave up over 300 yards to the great Ryan Tannehill. So I think that the struggles there continue. I know he's probably going to be shadowed by Casey Hayward and, the name recognition. People might shy away from that matchup, but he's ranked 39th among all cornerbacks in terms of coverage snaps per reception at 13 snaps per reception. And teams aren't shying away from him. He's ranked 31st according to PFF in terms of coverage grades by cornerbacks. And we just saw Hayward give up 5 receptions on 6 targets against the Titans, and it was A.J. Brown and Corey Davis combined. I think a stat line of 6 receptions on 10 targets, 85 yards and a touchdown, somewhere around there, right around 20 points is very reasonable for Allen Robinson. So looking at him at wide receiver 20, I'm taking that all day. All right, so those are the starts for the week compared to the Fantasy Pros rankings. Moving on to the sets. And Jordan, let's start with you. Who's a guy that you think is going to come in well below the ranking from the Fantasy Pros weekly consensus rankings this week?
Going to be Tyler Boyd. He's coming in right around wide receiver 25, I believe. But Jalen Ramsey makes a huge difference in that secondary. Not to mention how bad that Cincinnati Bengals offensive line is. And then they're going to have Aaron Donald. He's going to feast. It's going to be a lot of 3-and-outs for the Bengals. I don't want anything to do with him this week. So, I mean, he's had a weirdly inconsistent season as far as targets. His last 4 games, he's had 6 targets, 14 targets, 7, and then 14 again. So we could, see another game where he has somewhere between 5 to 7 targets, and I just think it's going to be really bad and it's going to get out of hand quick, so I don't want to touch Tyler Boyd.
I've been going through and trying to set my lineups. It's early in the week, but I like to get an idea of what my lineups are going to look like in my dynasty and redraft leagues. And I do have a lot of Tyler Boyd. And there have been situations where I have other options that typically I'm not going to start over him, but I'm leaning that way because that is a really tough matchup. And I do think that offensive line struggles against that pretty fierce front from the Rams defense there. So I like that take. Mitch, what are your thoughts here? Who's your sit?
My sit is it's actually not even matchup based. So it's going to be Cortland Sutton as wide receiver 17, and they're playing at Indianapolis. And the reason why he's my sit is I think people are really hyping him up the same way that happened to Tyler Boyd last year, the same thing that happened to Golladay last year. But what we saw is when Boyd lost AJ Green, his numbers went down. When Golladay lost Marvin Jones, his numbers went down. They end up getting a few more targets a game, but like we've talked many times previously, they just don't have the same catch rate. The targets aren't as good. And with Flacco throwing him the ball on the road in an early game, I have no idea why Sutton is ranked as wide receiver 17 this week.
Do you think he would be 17th if Emmanuel Sanders was still there?
I think so, yeah, because he was playing that way. But like I said, once they lose that really, and it wasn't even that Emmanuel Sanders was getting so many more targets. It's the defense has to respect it so much more when Sanders is on the field. And I know I'm going to talk about Hamilton a little bit later, but he just isn't going to do the same thing for him.
Yeah, I saw a tweet earlier today, and it said, I think it was 6 targets per game that's being vacated by Emmanuel Sanders leaving for San Francisco. But we have to assume that all 6 of those targets are not going to Cortland Sutton off the bat. Dan, who's your sit for the week?
All right, gentlemen, I am going to go hard on this guy here. Not only am I going to sit him this week, John, but if Fantasy Pros does not adjust their rankings, I'm going to sit him for the next 4 weeks. I am going to shatter a lot of people's dreams that are hoping he's their savior in the free agent wire here, okay? Chase Edmonds, sit him. He is playing the New Orleans Saints, whose defense is just playing lights out, okay? Ezekiel Elliott had trouble versus him. You tell me Chase Edmonds is going to run versus him? And even though it's a passing script, there is not enough receptions or yards that he's going to get that day to make him worth that number 16 ranking. And when I say sit the next 5 weeks, he's got the Saints, then the Niners, then the Buccaneers underrated run D, then the Niners again, and then he gets a bye, so he can't even help your fantasy team. And by that point, you're out of the playoffs. Sit or trade Chase Edmonds right now.
Dan, did you have a lot of Chase Edmonds on your bench this week? You seem kind of bitter. Just a little bit.
Full disclosure, he did cost me 1 redraft league.
Yeah, and Dan, I'm glad you brought this up because Mitch and I kind of talked about it earlier, and I feel like this might come up a little bit later in the show with the DFS stuff. I'm just a little guest there, Mitch. But when you look at that backfield, if David Johnson does play and it's not the same situation that we saw last week, it's only going to be an emergency situation, but he's still active, blah, blah, blah. Do you think they both can have value? Well, I guess you answered it by saying Chase Edmonds is your sit. So do you think it's more the David Johnson show this week, or do you think they just kind of cannibalize each other?
I'm concerned David Johnson's even coming back anytime soon. They're saying it's the ankle more than it is the back. I heard one rumor that there is some concerns about a disc in his back. So I'm not sure what the David Johnson story is. If he does come back and take any reps, that's horrible. But even if David Johnson's out for a while, that 4-game schedule and then a bye, and again, specifically this week versus the Saints, I don't see Chase Edmonds coming near that ranking.
Yeah, it's very high this week. And like you said, it's definitely based on the matchup, not only this week, but the few weeks, looking ahead. It's tough sledding for him. And for me, this is going to be very quick, short and sweet. Running back 11, Nick Chubb at New England. That offense has already had some troubles, but now you're going against the best defense in the NFL. The Patriots defense, they're kind of a bend but don't break when it comes to the run game. They're giving up over 4 yards per carry, but teams typically get away from the run because they are down early. They've only given up 2 rushing touchdowns this year, and I don't see Nick Chubb finding the end zone, and that's really the only way he's going to be able to even come close to that running back 11 number. I see him as a really low-end running back 2, and there's a few situations where I would sit him. I would sit him for a Tevin Coleman. I would sit him for an Austin Eckler. Chubb's just somebody that if I have other options, I'm actually sitting in leagues this week. What do you guys think there? I know it's a scary matchup. Nick Chubb, people love him. What do you think?
You already know what I'm going to say about the Browns, dude. Just sit everybody.
Yeah, that's an easy one. Mitch hates everybody on the Browns. Jordan, what were you going to say?
I would tend to agree, but how many times are we going to tell people to sit Nick Chubb this year and he just blasts off? Like,
if you remember,
at what point do we have to just accept that he might be like legit?
There's your word. He is legit. I like Nick Chubb. I have him on a lot of rosters, but I want no part of this offense, if possible, against this defense.
And that's absolutely fair. That's absolutely fair.
But like I did earlier in the season, I did say to sit Nick Chubb, and that was the game he went off for like 200 yards against the Ravens. So who knows?
My only counterpoint, John, in watching that Jets game is Le'Veon Bell found lanes. He got some positive yards. Unfortunately, Sam Darnold couldn't hit the broadside of a barn. I would like to think Baker and OBJ, just Landry, move the chains a little bit. So maybe Chubb has one of those 90 yards and a touchdown days. I don't know. I mean, you got to start your stars and redraft. Who do you have better than Nick Chubb? Definitely not Chase Edmonds. So that's going to be an interesting one to watch, John.
No, but like I said, I would be okay starting if I have an Austin Eckler or Tevin Coleman that could fill in as my running back 2 this week. It might come back to bite me in the ass, but I'm just avoiding Chubb. Now, there are a few leagues where I do have to start him because it's a deeper league, and I really have no other options, especially with injuries and bye weeks, but it's not a matchup I'm liking. So moving along here to the DFS stuff, and Mitch going the perfect 3 for 3 last week, and that even includes his under $4,000 dart throw of A.J. Brown. So both Dan and Mitch, you were on the right track there. You know, looking at the receivers that had a situation that was changing, it was A.J. Brown and Corey Davis. Those are the guys that went off. And Humphreys didn't have a terrible game, just didn't hit that threshold. As a team, on the over $6,000 fades and under $6,000 plays, we went a combined 5 for 6. So not too shabby. We hit on the Mark Ingram and Keenan Allen takes as a sit. Dan, Kamara didn't play. Sorry about that. And then T.Y. Hilton, Josh Jacobs, and Hunter Henry, all his plays. The only missed Tevin Coleman, but that was the wet and wild 9-0 thriller against the Washington Redskins. So it's hard to stay mad at you, Jordan, about that one. Let's hit on the over $6,000 fades. And Jordan, let's start with you here.
At 7,400, I'm going to sit Todd Gurley. Like I mentioned earlier, I think this one's going to get out of hand rather quickly. And I think they're really going to make a concerted effort to keep him healthy and fresh this year. So with the way Darrell Henderson's been looking with the touches he's been getting, I think he's going to cannibalize Gurley a little bit if this game gets out of hand quickly like I'm expecting. So at 7,400, that's a pretty decent chunk. So I'm going to go ahead and sit Todd Gurley.
Even if it doesn't get out of hand quickly and we're a little wrong on the game script, I think I would avoid him anyway at this point, especially at that price. So I agree with that one. Mitch, over $6,000 fade. Who do you got?
See, real quick, I wish Gurley was still at 6,800 because if he was at 6,800, I feel a little bit better because if he got you 2 touchdowns with them getting up early quickly and he got both of those, you're going to be okay. But like Jordan said, 7,400 is just too steep.
Yeah, going off of that before we get to your take here, I'm looking at some of these prices, and it's crazy some of the guys they've priced up, and that's a perfect example there. Todd Gurley, he should not be that expensive.
Exactly. Yeah. And there's the guy I'm going to talk about later. They dropped him in price for what reason? I really don't know. But so this is just going off what Dan said earlier. I actually have David Johnson or Chase Edmonds, whoever starts. It looks like it's going to be Chase Edmonds, but it's an early game for the Cardinals and New Orleans is just going to dominate both sides of the ball, just like they did against the Bears. I'm not going to have any Cardinals in my lineups this week. I'm not going to try to get cute and put Fitzgerald in there thinking he's going to get some garbage time. But one thing I wanted to mention is I think the Patriots and the Rams are going to be 2 of the highest owned defenses this week. And I think the Saints are a great GPP pivot this week off those 2.
I believe they were, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think they were coming in at price-wise running back 9 and running back 10 back-to-back.
Yeah, they were right next to each other. It was like 6,300 and 6,200, I think.
So I have to assume that when they were doing the DraftKings prices, they were thinking if David Johnson plays, obviously he's going to be the running back 1 again in this offense. And if he doesn't, we have to price up Chase Edmonds.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's what happened too.
Dan, Who do you have here? Over $6,000 fade.
Before I get to that, I just want to little counterpoint to Jordan's Gurley and your guys' comments about Gurley. The only thing in my head there, and I know we're all concerned about Gurley and his reps, but we know Malcolm Brown, I believe, is going to be out. The Cincinnati Bengals look horrible. Like, they look like they quit a week ago, and now they got to travel to Los Angeles. Like, he may not need all his snaps, Gurley, to eat in this game, and I think they're going to dominate and run the clock, and that might be a sneaky play. I list it as a sneaky play, even though I understand the concerns about Gurley. But going to my pick, I'm going to just take the sure point here. I probably just put the hex on us with the sure point, but
I think you're going to pick the same guy as me. But go ahead.
No, I'm staying with Mitch. It's Chase Edmonds. I hate to be repetitive, but I know I'm 3 points down from Mitch, and I got to keep you guys at bay there, Bauer and Jordan. I just think the New Orleans Saints. I love Mitch's point of the Saints being a sneaky GPP. As I look at the DraftKings pricing here, most people are going to go with the Rams at 4,300, Niners at 3,700. You can save a little bit of cash at 3,500 and take the Saints. And I don't think the Cardinals reach that Vegas implied total of 19 points. So Chase Edmonds, I'm sitting him with that over 6K price.
So I would say that you're showing some, and I don't want to steal your word, but some conviction here with that take. We're really driving home the anti-Cardinal sentiment here this week.
You know me well, my friend.
And again, on this take here, my over $6,000 fade, and it's going to be a similar situation to Nick Chubb, but I'm going with Christian McCaffrey at San Francisco, priced at running back 9,200. A few weeks ago, I said to sit Christian McCaffrey. He also went off that week, and I said I will never again vote or pick against Christian McCaffrey. But this week against that Niners defense, giving up one rushing touchdown, similar to the Patriots, kind of bend but don't break, giving up just over 4 yards per carry. I could see McCaffrey getting the 20 carries, 100 yards, even 5 catches for 40 yards, hitting that 100-yard bonus, 22 points. But that's not enough for that price tag. And I think you can find similar production elsewhere at a much lower price. It's more to do with that Niners defense as opposed to Christian McCaffrey, who's obviously a fantastic player, but it's just too expensive for me. Are any of you guys afraid of Christian McCaffrey this week against that defense at that price?
John, I'm hoping you put the hex on there, and saying you'd never do this again, and hopefully he does go off because I have him in a few leagues. But here's just a little bit of a thought here, and I think we all agree the Niners look awesome and their defense is awesome. But they have played the Bucs, the Bengals, the struggling Steelers, the struggling Browns, the inconsistent Rams, the struggling Redskins. Could Christian McCaffrey and the hot Panthers, coming off a bye with 2 weeks prep, kind of bring the Niners back to earth?
He could. And if there's anybody that could go off against any defense, it's going to be Christian McCaffrey. And like I said, when I picked Nick Chubb a few weeks ago, he went off against the Ravens, a tougher defense. And then McCaffrey, I forget what game I picked him as a fade. He went off, but we're going back to it. Chubb and McCaffrey, my guys, I just don't like this week because of those matchups. All right, so moving ahead, under $6,000 plays. These are, let's say there are guaranteed picks. You have to have these guys in your lineups. Mitch, let's start with you. Who do you have?
Going with Tevin Coleman. And this is who I was mentioning when we were talking about the price changes. They dropped Coleman's price by 800 because he's going against Carolina. But Carolina has a bottom 12 defense if you look at the adjusted line yards against the rush. And San Francisco is a top 3 offensive line in the adjusted line yards as well. And I just think Kyle Shanahan is the best running game mind in the league right now. And if I could get his number one back, who's getting about 60% of the snaps the last few weeks, and I think this game is going to be really close. And he's already getting all the red zone work. And so I think Coleman's an easy play at 5K.
I was just going to say, and you just mentioned it, all the red zone work paired with, and I might be misrepresenting this here a little bit, but I think he went from like 16 carries to 18 carries to 20 carries in back-to-back weeks. So we're seeing a slight uptick there. That paired with the red zone usage, it seems like a slam dunk this week, especially at that price.
Yeah, he went from 55% snap percentage up to a little bit over 65%. Breida had a concussion issue last week, and so I don't know if that's still going to be an issue this week, but it's just something to look at as well.
Right, and I feel like part of the reason for that drop in price might be while he did get the touches last week, it was kind of a weird game with the weather, but he really wasn't productive. Jordan, I know a few weeks ago you were talking up Tevin Coleman. Do you still feel the same way? Do you think this is going to be a bounce back week for him against Carolina?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I'm gonna keep riding Tevin Coleman. Like the volume and the snaps are there. There's no reason to not play Tevin Coleman, especially at 5,000.
Right, and I even mentioned somebody like him earlier that I would play over somebody like Nick Chubb this week. So we'll see if we're all on the same page here and if things go well for us. Dan, who are you taking here?
All right, I'm going to give the listeners a few names, John. I have a conviction in my one main pick, but for the sake of not being too repetitive tonight, I want to give some other advice. But my under 6K play I'll start with is D.D. Westbrook again. Somehow he is priced all the way down to 4,500 after looking phenomenal last week. 4 weeks ago, he was priced at 5,300, then dropped to 5,100, then 4,900. Mind you, he keeps playing better every week. He is now 4,500. I think he is in the bargain bin here. Now, just for the sake of giving the listeners some variety, let's say DD, the injury for some reason is worse and doesn't play. Save a couple $100 in your budget there. You could go up to Kenny Stills for 4,700. You could go with the John Bauer special for 4,500 if you want to play off. So I think there's some other receivers you could play. And it also makes me look at Minshew Mania. I know Jordan will like this in GPP at 5,500. So there are some other plays under that range, but my conviction pick, D.D. Westbrook.
I like it. I think those are some good names to throw out there, but I'm also glad that you let everyone know that D.D. Westbrook was the guy that you had to have. Jordan, you're under $6,000 play.
Mine is a guy that is someone that I don't like, and it's someone that Bauer likes. And at 5,500, with a question quarterback this week with Matt Ryan and Matt Schaub, it's going to be Devontae Freeman. You know, I think if Matt Schaub plays, there's going to be a lot of check down to the running back and a lot of reliance on the running game. Ito Smith is concussed. We're not sure if he's in the clear protocol, so it's going to be his backfield. And regardless if Ryan plays or not, I mean, I think even Ryan on a gimpy ankle will want to check down to Freeman as well. So I think the volume is going to be insane for him. And hopefully the Falcons just don't let us down and put up an absolute egg like last week. But I just can't see that happening 2 weeks in a row. So I'm just going to roll the dice and go with Freeman.
Yeah, last week was brutal. And this is just a thought. Of course, I like Devontae Freeman, but I think he is going to be a man on a mission this week after getting ejected last week, after having another man pick him up off the ground by the collar. I don't know. I think he's going to be a little pissed off, and I think he's going to have a fire under him. So I like that pick, and I think he's going to come out there with a chip on his shoulder, especially if Matt Schaub does play. I agree with you, Jordan. I think we're going to see a lot of checkdowns, and we know that Devontae Freeman can be involved in the passing game. My guy, and Dan, you already mentioned him, Kenny Stills at $4,700 against the Raiders. Again, I talked about some teams earlier where they were picked apart last week in the passing game. The Raiders are no different. Aaron Rodgers, he had his best game in 2019 with Jake Kumaro and MVS breaking away for long touchdowns. That's going to be Kenny Stills this week. Will Fuller's out. As a result, last week, Kenny Stills saw 94% of the snaps. 94%. If he's going to see anything close to that against this defense, there's no reason that he's not going to return that price tag. And I actually see him as a really high-end wide receiver too this week. And even in redraft, if I have him, or some dynasty leagues, I have in my lineup this week, and I feel very comfortable putting him in there.
I love him this week. I had him written up as well, and then I actually thought that Dan was going to go with him, so I wrote up Coleman instead.
I know Mitch and I were having a little Kenny Stills Kiki debate during the week a little bit, just kind of analyzing that, you know, and watching that Green Bay game. Some of those receivers were so wide open. I mean, I've never seen you throw a football, John, but I would bet you could have completed a few of those. So still should break open this weekend. I
don't know, Dan. I wouldn't bet on that one about me completing a pass against anybody. But they were, in no offense and no knock on Jake Kumaro or Marquez Valdes-Scantling, but they were doing whatever they wanted against this defense. And again, it was a great bounce back game for Aaron Rodgers. And I just think this Texans offense, you know, they're going to go off. And we're talking about Kenny Stills or Kiki. Why not see all of the above? I think this could be an absolute field day for this offense. Let's get our shovels out. Under $4,000. We say dart throw. As Dan referenced my Isaiah McKenzie pick last week, that was an absolute Hail Mary. And he was tackled on the 1 yard line. So close to finding the end zone. But I still don't think he would have even given me a point here because I don't think he would have had a 3 times return on the price. But let's talk about the under $4,000 dart throws. And Dan, let's start with you. Who do you have? And before we go, Mitch, you said that you thought all 4 of us were going to come in with the same exact guy this week.
I do. I think this one's pretty obvious.
All right. So
and I said no, and I want to go last because I said no. So
all right, that's fine.
Do that.
I'll sneak in before you, Jordan, this time.
Excellent.
Dan, who do you have?
Mitch is reading this fairly well, though. He's definitely onto something. They have a crystal ball. And these under 4K plays are just brutal, John, especially, midweek when we're recording. You're putting me to the test, and I think this is why Mitch has a nice 3-point lead on me right now. But I am going back to the well with Adam Humphries at the low 3,900. Last game, 4 catches, 40 yards, 8 points. I didn't get that extra touchdown I saw coming. But again, he continues to get 4 to 6 targets. There's life with the Titans now with Ryan Tannehill. 2 weeks ago, he had 6 for 47. He is so close, and now he gets Jordan's Bucs secondary, 28 versus the pass. He is overdue, and I'm going to keep saying it and probably keep going with this pick every week until I'm right. Until he gets that first touchdown of the year. I predict it is versus the Bucs this weekend.
Hey, if you keep picking him, he's going to be right eventually, right?
One of these times, man. Throwing spaghetti at the wall. It's going to stick.
All right, Mitch, do you have the same guy? I'm assuming you're going a different route this week.
Sure don't. Yep. So actually, I have Deshaun Hamilton. We talked about him a little bit earlier. And it's not that Emmanuel Sanders is opening up a lot of targets. It's just that Deshaun Hamilton is going to be on the field just a little bit more than he was before. And at 3,300, he's had 6 target games already this year. So I think 6 targets is probably going to be his floor now. And at 3,300, that's all I'm really looking for. And you're kind of hoping that he busts one and gets 4 for 50 yards or somewhere around there.
All right, so I think we're all going to have a different pick here. So you were completely wrong there, Mitch, which we're all used to you being wrong. But anyway, under $4,000 dart throw for me. Jordan, I'll let you go last. I have one of your boys, Mitch. J.D. McKissick. I made a comment about him a couple weeks ago, and I said, if you have the chance to give J.D. McKissick the ball, I guess you do it. And I said it in jest. But at 3,900 against the New York Giants, the last 3 games he's played, he's seen anywhere from 24 to 35% of the snaps. And of course, the news, Kerryon Johnson hitting the IR. It's going to be a committee in my mind. It's going to be Ty Johnson and it's going to be J.D. McKissick. And I know everybody had Ty Johnson as the big waiver wire ad this week. And I'm not saying it's a bad play, but I think it's going to be more of a committee than people would like. And seeing this offense on a weekly basis, they enjoy a good committee. So I don't think it's going to be any different this week. Last 2 weeks, he's had 3 targets each of those 2 games. I think we see a little bit of an uptick there. And I'm going to call it right now. J.D. McKissick is finding the end zone against the New York Giants. And I think he's going to give you a solid return, especially that $3,900 price tag. So maybe not quite a dart throw, but certainly not the Hail Mary that I had last week in Isaiah McKenzie. Now, over to you, Jordan. A drum roll here. Who do you have?
Man, I was really, really hoping that after Dan said Adam Humphries, that you guys were all going to go Adam Humphries, just so I could pop in with Adam Humphries' replacement, Scotty Miller. Scotty Miller's 3K. I know Perriman's coming back, but I think he's officially all but phased out. He's just not good. But the last game before the bye, Scotty Miller had 7 targets. A couple of them were uncatchable, but I think Jameis is coming off that game we haven't really talked about, that I think he's going to really just focus on finding the open guys. I don't think he's going to force anything, so I think it's going to be a lot of I think it's going to be a lot of Godwin and Miller underneath, maybe OJ if they can get him open, but I think Scotty Miller at 3K, it wouldn't take too much to pop, so I would take that.
And especially in GPPs, I would have to assume that's a guy that has a very low ownership percentage. All right, guys, closing thoughts. We're over the halfway point of the fantasy regular season. Week 8 is upon us. What do you have for our listeners? And Dan, let's throw it over to you to start.
Appreciate it, pal. As we sit here midweek, I think I finally recovered from Aaron Rodgers and Marvin Jones crushing all the DFS slates and taking my money. So I'm ready to rebound. Want to give the listeners some more advice and have them rebound with me. It's the time to bounce back. As you approach game day, if our listeners are not already, hop on Twitter, either join or start a list of beat writers. They could do that by picking their favorite fantasy players, probably us included, see what lists we have and join them and get that last minute news. Last minute news wins DFS slates. You see how guys looking in pregame warm-ups, a guy you're not sure if he's playing. Follow those Twitter lists and good luck to our listeners this weekend.
That's a really great point on the beat reporters, and not only from a DFS perspective, but from Dynasty as well. That was something I went through, and I followed a ton of beat writers on Twitter, and you start hearing these names that you didn't even think about or even knew existed, and then they might become fantasy relevant. Maybe not this year, but hey, they have a chance to make the roster maybe the following year. But that's a really good point, Dan. I like that one for the listeners. Jordan, what do you have here? Closing thoughts.
Yeah, in redraft, I think it's time to, if you need to make a move, it's time to make a move. Package 2 guys for 1 stud or something. This is the time of year where it's also time to start grabbing your handcuffs. So if you can, improve at a position by getting rid of 2 mid-tier players and then grabbing a handcuff to fill your roster, I think it's time to do that, especially if you need wins now. It's time. We have 4 or 5 weeks left in the regular season, so it's getting time.
That's a really good point, too, talking about the handcuffs, or even a guy that might have an opportunity because of a situation changing. We talk about Damian Williams a lot, but last year he was that league winner late in the season, and he contributed nothing, obviously, the first half of the season because he didn't have that opportunity. But yeah, if you have those guys at the end of your bench and it's a guy that you're never going to start finding those handcuffs, because those are guys with the snap of your fingers, their situation could change and they potentially could be that next league winner where, again, somebody that wasn't even on your radar. So I like that one too. Mitch, what do you have here? Closing thoughts heading into week 8.
So mine's less of a thought and actually more of a question for you guys. So season long or dynasty or whatever, when you're playing a head-to-head against someone, you're looking at their lineup and you see they have, let's just say, Kenny Golladay this week. And you have the option of either starting Matthew Stafford or someone like Jared Goff. Would you start Stafford knowing that you're going to cover all of Galladay's points, or do you just go purely off matchup and play Jared Goff?
I'm going to give you a really quick answer, and it's almost 100% of the time I'm going strictly based on matchup if there's 2 guys similarly valued in my mind. So I'm not taking into account my opponent's roster at all when making that decision.
I'd have to agree. If it's close, I'm looking at the matchup. So situation specific, Mitch, but that's a tough one. They both look good this weekend.
I'm also looking at like what I might need, or I think it would be nice to cancel the touchdowns, but Jared Goff could absolutely just go off this weekend. So that's a tough one, but I wouldn't put too much stock into it now.
What are your thoughts, Mitch? Or maybe why did that come up? Did a situation come up?
Yeah, it was the same situation as one of my lineups. I was actually looking at my opponent. I never really do that before, but I hadn't put my lineup in yet. I was just seeing what he did, and he has Golladay, and I have, Goff or Stafford. I was going to play Stafford anyways because actually I like that matchup a little bit better than Goff's. So I'm playing Stafford without even considering Goff now. It's a 6-point per passing touchdown league, which I think changes a little bit because, if Golladay gets a touchdown, you're getting the exact same amount of points for Stafford.
Yeah, it is really interesting, and it's something that I typically have not thought about, but once you mentioned it earlier today, I gave it some thought, and yeah, it wouldn't be something that I would really look to do, I guess. But yeah, so great advice here for the listeners, talking about the starts and the sits and the guys that we have valued much higher than the consensus and lower, and then the DFS takes. We're gearing up here, guys. Week 8. It's time to make some moves like Jordan said, and you got to make that push. From a dynasty perspective, if you're not making that push or, you're not entering the rebuild, you're just sitting there in no man's land and you're doing nothing. You need to be active this time of year. You always need to be active, but especially this time of year, this is where you can start to make that push towards a championship, whether it's in redraft or dynasty. As always, thank you for listening. Follow the show on Twitter @SuperFlexology. Best of luck in week 8 and have a great night.